I so appreciate Waylon and Clyde and Alan and just being able to speak with them, and I love having fellowship with you guys. I wish I could stay all weekend. I'm having to actually cut this talk a little short. I'm going to talk for probably about another 5 minutes and then just open a few questions up to you guys, and then I've got to get back on the road. But again, I wanted to give out my contact information for other questions. If you thought the first part this morning was sci-fi, you're really going to like this part. Because this is where I want to talk about what's going on now and how the deception that's going to come at the end times, the framework for it, the groundwork is being laid now. You hear this a lot of times in what we came out of, mainstream Christianity, that Hollywood's the devil's playground. It's Satan's media outlet. Well, that's very true in the sense that we are being conditioned to accept something that's coming. If you look at the type of movies that are the most popular now, you get into things like the Avengers. What was Thor? Thor was an ancient god, a man worshipped as a god. You get into things like one of my favorites, Star Wars. Talk about life outside of planet Earth, where there's an energy field called the Force. There is no God, there's just an energy field that we all can manipulate. Yeah, that's right. And actually telling the backstory of Anakin Skywalker, he had no father. He had a mother, but the Force generated him. You know? So you get into that sort of thing. You get into movies like Splice, where it talks about the technology, what was happening when the sons of man and the sons of God manipulated the DNA of humans and created giants and created all sorts of things. And that sort of stuff, you got to know where to look for it, but you can go out on the internet and you can find where they're talking about that sort of thing, crossbreeding of human DNA with animal DNA to create all sorts of weird things going on in government labs now. Now they position it all in the stance of trying to find cures for disease and that sort of thing. But I don't think that's the case. I think there's a more nefarious reason for why that stuff's going on. But when you start to see things like movies such as E.T., the extraterrestrial, he's a cute, funny guy. He hangs out with the stuffed animals in the little girl's closet and stuff. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they're friendly aliens that come down out of a spaceship and they're just here to help us along and that sort of thing. I want to read you, does everyone acknowledge demonic activity? We saw it rampant throughout the scriptures, demonic activity. A good example of it, and it's something that's very popular now, is using a medium to contact the dead. Now we know that the dead are actually dead. But when King Saul went to visit the witch of Endor, a demonic being posed as Samuel. Had the voice of Samuel, looked like Samuel. And that kind of counterfeiting is going on now. One of the most popular shows on TV is Long Island Medium, where demonic activity is kind of pushed out to the mainstream. Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about is I believe that the mode by which many of the celestial wicked are working now and making themselves known to this earth is through a phenomenon that's the UFO, quote, alien phenomenon. A lot of it is kept quiet, but the database currently for sightings that are reported is over 93,000 sightings. You have presidents such as Truman who have made statements, one quote where he said, yes, flying saucers do exist, and they are not created on this earth. And that's a U.S. president saying that. There was a documented case in World War II. This was in 1942. You can actually go out on the internet and pull up I believe it was the Los Angeles Times that reported this. There were ships over Los Angeles. This has become known as the Battle of Los Angeles. The worry was, the concern by the military was that it was some sort of new craft that had been developed by the Japanese. So began an anti-aircraft assault on it, firing into the sky thousands of rounds, and they were hitting these ships. Those ships stayed there. People even talk now on camera about how they were kids then and said, yeah, it was the scariest thing we ever saw. It was reported in the news. How many people have heard of that? There's a couple. Yeah. Well, that movie's loosely based on something that really did happen. Well, in 2 Thessalonians 2:11 through 12, Paul says, and therefore God will be sending them an operation of deception for them to believe the falsehood, the lie, not a falsehood, that all may be judged who do not believe the truth but delight in injustice. And I want to talk to you a little bit about this ground that's being laid for this coming deception. People who have had contact with these, quote, aliens, and I'll just call them celestial beings, here's what they're saying. See how spooky this is. They say that they were our creators, that they created us through technology. They tell them that Jesus was one of the ascended masters, just like Buddha, just like Muhammad. And that these messengers were sent from them to enlighten us. They say that they want to help mankind move forward just like Jesus, become like him. They claim that Jesus, after he was crucified, was revived through their technology. And that he was taken away up in a ship. They say that Gabriel, who came to Mary, was one of them, to tell her that she would give birth to this ascended master. But I'm telling you, people are falling for this stuff. This is where the New Age religion and paganism are headed. If you think about this, mainline Christianity doesn't even believe in a snatching away anymore. They don't believe that the events in Revelation are still future. They believe that that stuff happened in the past. Now, if you think about this, mainline Christianity is waiting not to be manifest in heaven, like Paul said. They're waiting for the return of Christ. They're waiting for the second coming to be the next big event. The Jews in Israel are waiting for the Messiah to come. They rejected the real one. They're waiting for a false one. When you look at all the ancient cultures around the world and where these people, our modern day human companions have sprung up, when you go back to their ancient beliefs, they're all waiting for the return of their creators, these gods. And I believe that when we're made manifest and they're booted out, they're not going to come showing up looking like angels. They're going to come in a disguise. Satan approached Eve with a disguise. He came as a serpent that looked very beautiful. And these beings, when they come back to earth, when they're cast to earth, they're going to come with all the answers. And they're going to be led by the Antichrist, who's going to have the answers to unite the world in a new religion that's going to direct worship to Satan. Now, the good thing is we know how all this ends. We know that this is just one piece of God's overall plan. And we'll get to play a part in it, in that we'll help reconcile these evil beings. They won't always be evil, just as Satan won't always be the adversary. My guess is that Satan would have to get a new name after his time in the lake of fire. He'll be purified. He won't be adversary anymore. And this is all through what Christ did on the cross. And I wanted to let you know this too. The Catholic Church, the Vatican, is very much invested in all this. Did y'all know that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, owns one of the largest astronomical observatories in this country? And that telescope's name is Lucifer. Now, it's an acronym, but it's called Lucifer. And I want to give you a few of the quotes that the Catholic priests, astronomers, have said, what they've said publicly. And this is Father Giuseppe Tanzella-Niti, Vatican astronomer, who's the head of the program there. This is what he had to say. Christians will not immediately need to renounce their faith in God simply on the basis of the reception of this new information of a religious character from extraterrestrial civilizations. However, once religious content originating from outside the earth has been verified, they will have to conduct a rereading of the gospel inclusive of that new data. And that's a priest within the Catholic Church.
When was this?
I don't have a date for you. I can get it for you. This is a quote from Father Malachi Martin, who has advised the last 3 popes. He says, the highest levels of the Vatican administration and geopolitics know that now knowledge of what's going on in space and what's approaching us could be of great import in the next 5 to 10 years. This was a quote from Gordon Cooper, who was a NASA astronaut in the Mercury and Gemini programs. He said, you want to know about UFOs and little green men? Contact the Vatican. They have an observatory out in Arizona, and that's what they're looking for. And all this is being set up to bring about this last false delusion. And I can probably take 1 or 2 questions real quick if you've got any, if anybody has any.
I've read some of that stuff too. Doesn't the Vatican also call it an alien savior?
Yeah.
I mean, aren't they, like, the delusion is around that this being that makes contact is actually a savior?
Yeah. And I don't think we give enough credit to Catholicism for what it came out of. The early church fathers who founded Catholicism, all they did was rework paganism.
Right.
Where they used to worship Venus, they changed that to Mary. Where they used to have statues of Zeus, Apollo, and so forth, they renamed them Paul, Peter, and so forth. Where the actual Sabbath was on Saturday, they made it Sunday in honor of the god Sol Invictus, who was the sun deity. It's all been, you know, the joke everybody always would say when we were in our Baptist and Pentecostal churches, that the only time the pagans come to church is on Easter and Christmas. Well, it just so happens those are pagan holidays.
Right.
And that's when the pagans were supposed to come in. So it's working like a charm.
You know, I've started to look at some of the stuff just recently by, you know, I don't want to say coincidence.
Yeah, yeah.
That you talk about the sons of gods or the daughters of men. But what you're talking about is the spiritual
And the
making a fleshly creature with the physical.
and how does that work?
And how does that work?
Because I don't think they actually mated with the human women. I think that was the way Moses wrote it down, because that was within his, he didn't understand that technology. What they did was, when it says that they took wives for themselves, that word that's translated wives just means women. But what they did was they took them and they implanted them to give birth. They reworked the DNA, they took DNA, they reworked it. My guess is they did all sorts of things. Mixed it in with animals, mixed it in with plants to create all sorts of monsters. And that's why the flood was sent, to wipe all that out. But when I'm not a big proponent of going out to the extra biblical writings, but when you get in, you know, if you look at the book of Enoch, it goes into great detail about that the sons of God sinned against not only man and God, but against the animals. And that sort of thing, and that's how that happened. But it talks about that the sons of God are who taught men to fashion iron into swords, to use herbs as medicine and that sort of thing. If you think about it, that's only logical, because how many thousands and millions of years of trial and error would it take to come up with, if you mix this herb with this herb, you get this medicine that fixes this? It had to have happened quick.
Shortly after I was awakened into my faith, it's probably around the 1983 time frame. There was like a full 2-page spread in the, I think it's either the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, about this man who's going to come and be revealed.
Yeah.
I don't know if
The Matria?
Yeah. role they play in all of this?
Yeah, it's we talk about, if you zoom far enough out, the buck ultimately stops at God's desk, but He delegates to others. Well, you've got the principalities that are in charge of nations and that sort of thing, and these evil principalities. And then you go a little bit further down, zooming further in, and you have what I would call the elite. These that run these mega foundations and stuff like that to gear people and guide them to a certain outcome. Y'all, I've enjoyed it. I wish I could stay longer. Enjoy and really soak up what these men have to talk with you about, and this fellowship with each other. And if you want to shoot me an email or anything, especially if you'd like an outline so that you can go back and look at these scriptures and other things, shoot me an email and I'd be glad to send it to you. It'd probably be Monday or Tuesday before I get it sent out to you. But please do that. And I've enjoyed seeing all y'all and meeting some of you for the first time, and with some people, putting a face to a picture I see on Facebook or something. But thank you.